Right now, the map is changing in real time. New strike zones appear overnight, borders that once held are being tested, airspace is violated, supply lines are hit, and military convoys move under constant surveillance. This isn't a contained conflict anymore. It's expanding, quietly, steadily, and with every passing day, it's pulling more players into the fight. The question is no longer who's involved, it's who gets dragged in next. A targeted strike hits across a border. That's the event. The cause is retaliation. Calculated, deliberate. The consequence is immediate. Cross-border strikes become normalized. What was once a line is now a suggestion. And once borders lose meaning, escalation accelerates. Military leadership responds fast. Defense mobilization begins. Air defenses activate. Troops reposition. This triggers the next phase, military alliance activation. Partners step in, not always directly, but through intelligence sharing, arms transfer networks, and logistical support. What started as a local conflict now begins to resemble a proxy war expansion. This is how regional destabilization begins. Because every new actor changes the equation. Each involvement increases complexity. Each decision reduces control, and control is already fragile. At the same time, something less visible unfolds. Covert operations intensify. Intelligence agencies move behind the scenes, coordinating surveillance, targeting data, and strategic messaging. Cyber warfare attacks begin probing infrastructure. Communications, banking systems, logistics networks. These aren't isolated incidents. They are synchronized pressure points designed to weaken without direct confrontation. Event leads to disruption. Disruption creates uncertainty. Uncertainty drives escalation. And escalation feeds on itself. Now layer an economic response. Governments impose an economic sanctions regime, aiming to weaken adversaries without direct conflict. But sanctions don't operate in isolation. They trigger countermeasures, trade rerouting, alternative partnerships, and economic bloc polarization. Trade disruption follows, supply chains adjust under pressure. Costs rise, the consequence is immediate, energy supply instability. Oil and gas markets react instantly. Even the perception of disruption triggers oil price volatility. That volatility feeds directly into global inflation pressure. Food prices rise, transport costs increase. Entire economies begin absorbing the shock. This is how a regional war becomes a global economic problem. And still, the conflict continues to expand. Another strike, another retaliation, another actor enters, not officially, but operationally. This is great power involvement without declaration. Major states avoid direct war, but their presence is undeniable. They provide support, enforce red lines, and test limits. This creates a classic security dilemma. One side increases its defenses, the other interprets it as preparation for attack. Both escalate, believing they are responding defensively. The result? A loop with no natural stopping point. Now consider the humanitarian dimension. As fighting intensifies, populations begin to move. A refugee crisis spillover emerges. Neighboring states absorb the pressure. Resources strain. Political tensions rise. Humanitarian crisis escalation becomes unavoidable. This adds another layer of instability. Because humanitarian crises don't stay isolated, they influence diplomacy, internal politics, and international perception. They force external actors to respond, sometimes with aid, sometimes with intervention, and intervention changes everything. At this stage, the conflict is no longer defined by its origin. It evolves into geostrategic competition. Control over territory becomes secondary to control over strategic corridors, routes that define trade, energy flow, and military mobility. Whoever controls these corridors gains leverage. That leverage translates into influence across regions. This is why escalation continues, because every actor sees opportunity within chaos. But opportunity comes with risk, and that risk is miscalculation. A single foreign policy miscalculation, a misread signal, a delayed response, an overreaction can shift the entire trajectory. The crisis escalation ladder is no longer theoretical, it's active. Each step is being tested in real time. Limited strikes become sustained campaigns. Support operations become direct involvement. Deterrence begins to fail. This is the turning point. Strategic deterrence failure. When deterrence collapses, the system loses its buffer. Escalation becomes harder to control. Military-industrial escalation accelerates. Production increases. Supply lines expand. War becomes sustained, not temporary. And sustained conflict reshapes global structures. Now return to the present moment. Naval deployment increases in nearby regions. Air patrols intensify. Surveillance expands. Diplomatic channels begin to fracture. Clear signs of diplomatic breakdown. Ceasefire negotiations are proposed, delayed, and often rejected. Trust erodes. Without trust, negotiations stall. Without negotiations, escalation continues. The world is now operating in a multipolar tension environment. No single power dictates outcomes. Multiple actors push simultaneously, often with conflicting objectives. This creates friction, not just on the battlefield, but across the global system. Markets respond. Financial markets instability grows. Investors react to uncertainty. Capital shifts rapidly. Economies already under pressure begin to strain further. And still, the conflict grows. The expansion isn't always visible. Sometimes it's logistical, sometimes economic, sometimes digital, but it's constant. So what happens next? There are three possible trajectories. First, controlled containment. Escalation slows. Ceasefire negotiations succeed partially. The conflict freezes, unresolved but stabilized. This reduces immediate risk, but leaves underlying tensions intact. Second, prolonged expansion. Proxy war expansion continues. More actors engage indirectly. Economic and military pressure increase. The system adapts, but remains under constant strain. Third, systemic escalation. A trigger event, unexpected, rapid, forces direct confrontation between major powers. At this point, international intervention becomes unavoidable. Alliances activate fully. The conflict transforms. Not regional, not limited, global. The danger lies in how close these paths are to each other. A single event can shift the system from containment to escalation in hours. And that's the core reality. This war is not static, it is dynamic. Expanding through actions and reactions, decisions and consequences, signals and misinterpretations. At the beginning, it looked like isolated strikes, contained, manageable, distant. But those early events were only the surface. Beneath them, a chain reaction had already begun, linking regions, actors, and systems into a single expanding conflict. That expansion hasn't stopped. It's accelerating, and it's pulling the world in, step by step, decision by decision, consequence by consequence. The real question is no longer whether the war will grow, it's whether anything can stop it before the system crosses a point of no return. Subscribe for precise breakdowns of conflicts shaping the global order. Like this video to amplify real analysis. Share it, because the faster this spreads, the fewer places remain untouched.